The person that I'm about to introduce has been a big advocate for justice and sovereignty and the truth for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people within this country. She has used her platform to fight for us and to advocate for our needs. And it is with pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, that I ask you to welcome Lidia Thorpe to the stage.
Thank you very much for having me here today. I know it's controversial, but I want to first start by acknowledging that we're on stolen land, Larrakia land, and the struggle continues every day on your land and on our lands around this country. I also want to thank the Aboriginal Housing Northern Territory for putting on this important conversation because, you know, who are we without a home, a bed? So thank you very much for the last minute invite. I do show up for my mob wherever it is. When there's a fight to be had, I'll be there and I will put my body on the line. In saying that, my matriarchs in my life have done so. My great-grandmother set up the Aboriginal Funeral Fund because our people were being buried as paupers. We would have people from around the country come to Fitzroy looking for their families and dying as paupers. So my great-grandmother set up the Aboriginal Funeral Fund so that our people would be buried with dignity. My grandmother, Elma Thorpe, set up the first Aboriginal Health Service in Victoria, and she was part of the National and Aboriginal Islander Health Organisation before NACCHO. And it was about self-determination, it was about community control, and it was about pay the rent. Pay the rent is not new. Our old people came up with that in the 60s. So that is the community control that I was born into. I left school at year 9 and started working at the Koori Information Centre when I was 14. So I stand here as a senator from the grassroots communities that I've been a part of, who I've worked with and for. I worked at the Aboriginal Funeral Service for a number of years. I've seen a lot of our people pass in the 53 years that I've been around. And enough is enough. Enough is enough. We've been having these yarns for 50 years. Same yarns when I used to come here with my mum and Nan. They're the same yarns. So I just want to say that it's absolutely shameful that the politicians with the actual power to change the status quo did not even have the decency to turn up today. Shame. Shame on them all. You know, it's okay if there's a selfie and there's a moment, but I'm not one of those. I'm not seeing any difference towards our people at the grassroots level or at the federal government level. They actually don't care. So I better stick to my speech, otherwise I'll get myself into trouble. So when grassroots and community-controlled organisations invite you to a conversation about solutions, you turn up. And our community-controlled sectors have always struggled to meet demands. Always. It's like rations back on the mission station. My mother still lives on a mission. and having yarns yesterday, missions to us are like town camps. They're small communities. Cops don't care about what goes on the mission. When one gets sick, everyone gets sick. So this is happening around the country, but in different ways, different settings. We're trying to meet the demands of housing and homelessness, of poverty. We're the poorest people in our own country. We're homeless on our own country. So for too long we've had governments talk the talk, but won't act and are completely unaccountable for their actions. And what is happening right now on your country is a direct assault on First Peoples. The Northern Territory government is not just abdicating any responsibility for improving the lives of our people here. It is directly supercharging the genocide of our people. Genocide. It's slow and sophisticated. It's not what you're seeing in Gaza. The genocide on our people in this country is very slow and sophisticated, and you see that with the stats. So, to give you an example, forcibly removing children of one group is one of the 5 acts of genocide under the UN Genocide Convention. And that's happening with 24,000 of our kids in out-of-home care. And we are seeing those removal rates escalate each day, worse than the original stolen generations. They are stealing our children. The NT government, as you know, just a week ago introduced a bill to abandon the Aboriginal child placement principle, a principle from the Bringing Them Home report, which my mother was also a part of. She was the co-commissioner of Victoria. She heard hundreds and hundreds of stories of people that were stolen. The Bringing Them Home report was self-determined grassroots solutions, and they've only implemented 9 recommendations from that report. We know that only 17.5% of Aboriginal children being removed are placed with kin or Aboriginal family. This is assimilation through disconnection from country, culture, family, song, dance, language. When you take our babies and give them to white families, how do they maintain who they are? How do they grow up with their identity? They're robbing our children of their birthright. That is genocide. At the same time, our people are being targeted with more and more draconian bail laws, leading to even higher incarceration. And higher incarceration means more deaths in custody, and the government aren't interested in implementing those recommendations either. We know the trauma that our families experience from the colonial systems, the systems that were set up by a bunch of old white fellas who were racist and who didn't like women. They're the ones who wrote these laws that we're trying to adapt to. And government views, be it Labor, Liberal, CLP or One Nation, they all see us as lesser than. You see that in funding, you see that in policy. We are not lesser than. We are sovereign. We are the highest power as sovereign people to our land. We are the highest power through our law. Imagine if everyone in this country obeyed the laws of the land, our law, look after the land, look after each other, look after the water, look after the totems, that's the highest law. Their law is hurting us. It's hurting them. Our law sustains us for thousands and thousands of generations. That's why we are the oldest continuing living culture on the planet. And our old people fought for us to be here. That's why we all have a responsibility. We have strength, we have culture, we have family, connection, language, song, dance. They don't. What's their culture? What is their culture? Meat pie at the footy? Or a shrimp on the barbie? Like, what is their culture? Changes in so-called youth justice laws here now allow police to lock children up, young people for up to 48 hours, I know you know that, and question young people without an adult. This directly contravenes our international human rights obligations under the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. This is not youth justice. We've got to change the name. Where's the justice in youth justice? Where is it? They play with our words. They're jailing our children. All of these changes are intentionally targeting us, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part is another one of the 5 acts of genocide as per the Genocide Convention. And I don't know if there's any mob here who aren't affected in one way or another by what is going on with our people in this country. We all carry that. So all these changes are deliberately pursued to put a target on our people, not to close the gap. Closing the gap is gammon. It's gammon. Because it's only widening and it continues to cause harm. The latest NT government figures from 2024 show that 53.5% of homes are overcrowded, and we heard that. Inadequate, overcrowded, unsafe and insecure housing is at the root of so many problems our people are experiencing. It leads to disease, preventable disease, lower life expectancy, absenteeism from school, limited job opportunity, just to name a few. It intentionally leads to further criminalisation and more child removals. It denies our people the support and services we are entitled to and has us begging for basic human rights. This is genocide. So what can we do about it? In this year's budget, the government provides for $6.3 million over 3 years to establish a new peak body for Aboriginal housing, because the existing peak body has not operated for a while and done nothing. No disrespect to the mob involved in that, but the government never supported it in the first place. So what about listening to those bodies and experts that are already doing the legwork, like this room, that are already presenting solutions, like Aboriginal Housing NT, and like so many of you here today? Why can't governments just act on what you say is needed? Imagine that. Governments on all levels still give us rations and band-aids without ever addressing the root cause or supporting and investing in grassroots, self-determined solutions. Governments must look at funding and supporting holistic approaches to addressing these failures. We, in our culture, look at everything holistically. And the government, because that's what they are, they don't think like we do holistically. You can't just fix one thing without fixing everything. It's got to be a holistic approach. It must be through our lens, not theirs. Housing is a very first step. It is a basic human right under international law. Everyone has access to safe, secure, and affordable place to live. And people need to live on country. This is essential for our culture to survive. Us mob down south are dependent on you fellas here, because you are the keepers of our law. Our people are inseparable from the land. If our mother is taken from us, or we from our mother, we can't survive. Driving people away from country is another step in the displacement, dispossession and assimilation of our people, and a direct contravention under the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Living on the land is an act of resistance, of strength, of our sovereign birthright, essential to our very survival as a people. It is not a lack of money that prevents investment in self-determined solutions we know will work. They spend billions on defence capabilities. And the response to the Bondi attack alone is worth almost the entire Closing the Gap funding. And we don't deal with racism, do we? The racism perpetrated against us is not as important, unfortunately. So yet our programs are struggling for funding year by year. Organisations like Children's Ground have been working successfully with communities on the ground, supporting not just children and their families, but the whole community, and creating employment at the same time. We know the difference it would make if Aboriginal legal and other services were resourced and given adequate funding to function and work with our people to address the harms and effects of genocide in everyday life. Closing the Gap has done nothing for our people so far. Few jobs, economic development. But how do you get there if you don't have a home, you don't have a feed? We know most targets will not be met by 2031 in 5 years. Do they think we're stupid? 5 years and that's it. Closing the gap, done. We've done our job. Given them all of this money. We can't continue to rely on their promises and their rations. We have to be stronger. We have to stand up. In most cases, state and territories are implementing policies that they know will take these targets backwards. The Northern Territory government is one of the worst. It's the most racist government I've seen in my lifetime, and I'm sorry for what you have to deal with on your country, with those policies, with the ongoing violence from the state. They are the violent people, not us. A key structural problem with the Closing the Gap agreement is that there is no accountability built into it. States and territories are allowed to work against the agreement with no consequences. None. Federal funding continues to flow, and the federal government refuses to use any of the federal or constitutional powers they have to pull states and territories into line. So they fund the cops here, $230 million? For what? For what? The cops won't tell us what they've been doing with the $230 million. I've been asking. I've been asking the Minister for Indigenous Australians. I don't get an answer there either. Wouldn't you like to know where the $230 million actually went to? What the Northern Territory Police are spending that money on? And wouldn't that money have been better spent in your communities with all of the self-determined solutions that I know you have at those tables? Over the 5 years until 2031, the federal government is spending a total of $793.7 million on closing the gap initiatives. When we know that this agreement will fail to achieve targets, why are we waiting another 5 years with a business as usual approach before we ask the hard questions? We should be reviewing closing the gap now. I just think it should be abolished. Let's go back to the grassroots. They know how to close the gap. We don't need the government to tell us. It needs to be community control, not government controlling our lives always. Government have studied, consulted, had experts, black academics, commissioners, and even black ministers. They know the solutions because they've been told for decades and decades. We don't need another review or a commission or advisory board. They need to do what they've been told works by the people for the people. Here's one. Implement the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody. Or implement the Bringing Them Home report. Make Healing Happen report. Or wait, given the country is loving being racist right now, with the rise of the racist party, implement the National Anti-Racism Framework. Implement the self-determined solutions our people have given for decades. It is a lack of will from governments that is holding our people back. And believe me, this is not accidental. It is intentional, and it has been working very well for them for a while. How much land have they taken from us? How much destruction have they done since they've been here? But we will not let them get away with this. We must hold each and every one accountable for the positions they hold. This is why it's important for us to stand together and continue the fight. This is why it's important that you continue the work you are doing and never be silenced. To demand what is rightly ours, to demand justice, to demand an end to this genocide on our people. We are sovereign, we have power, we must use it and ensure our next generations have it too. So thank you for having me. I thought I'd cut it short so that I give the space to you for Q&A. And ask me whatever you like, I'll answer. I'm straight up. I'm not yes, I am a politician, but I'm in the Senate for my people first and foremost, and my grandmother's always said to me, don't ever forget where you come from. And that's what I walk into that place with, and I'll continue to do what I can. My seat is your seat. And if I fail you in any way, then I want you to be straight up with me on that too. So thank you.
Get a truth-telling going. Don't rely on the lawmakers. They're already compromised. We know who they work for, not us. So we can't always rely on them to give us the solution. We've got to get more organised, work together, and do our own truth-telling with Australian people. Because I'm sure most of the Australians are not happy with what the stats say either. And you're awesome. Well done.
Thank you, brother. There is a national walk going on for truth-telling. Travis Lovett, Gunditjmara man. I'm a Gunai Gunditjmara Djaparang woman. And he's calling on a national truth-telling process because They held a truth-telling process in Victoria, what is now called Victoria, and they heard evidence of genocide, and there are a number of recommendations that come from that, but the Victorian government haven't implemented the recommendations yet. But absolutely, South Africa had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission with Royal Commission powers. We absolutely must have that. We must tell the truth and bring the racists in to educate them, because whitefellas were denied the true history at school. So they've, through generations, have formed this mindset, racist mindset, that we get given stuff, all the stuff. But truth-telling is what will set us free. We tell our kids to not tell lies, but the government do. But yeah, I will be pushing for that, and next week Travis is arriving at Federal Parliament, and he's asked to meet with the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister hasn't responded yet. But we do need to push for truth-telling in this country. It's part of our healing as well, as a nation.
And again, I agree, I don't know closing the gap's working. It's been going for a long time. I think I agree with you when you say we should abolish it. If we do get rid of closing the gap, what would you do to address the 19 points?
Closing the gap is a distraction for our people. We're all looking at closing the gap targets, and we're trying to meet them, and we get the little rations on the table. That's never enough. And we're just focusing on this closing the gap that never closes. It will never close because we're not in control. So I'd want to know, it's so frustrating, even just as a politician. I just can't wait to get back to my mob in community and, work with real people. We need to look at what's going to keep us alive. Economic development is, yes, it's good for some mob that are doing all right, that don't have child removals or death in custody or not starving, they're doing all right. We need to focus on our people that are doing it the hardest. And that needs to be the priority in this country. If mob need housing here, deliver the housing. If mob need more services with legal services and health services, give them the funding that is required to close the gap. But they're not looking at it that way. They're investing in jobs and all of this economic development stuff, and that's always their response to me when I question them on closing the gap. Oh, but we're doing this, and we've got this many trainees and rangers, which is deadly. It's deadly, don't get me wrong. But what about our people that are starving and homeless and incarcerated? Where's a voice for our people that are locked up, that don't even get a say? Women given birth in shackles, and 10-year-olds, that's the priority. Stop causing us mental harm. That should be the priority. And I don't see any closing the gap targets on that, to be honest. It was closing the gap come from Howard, and it's just become more and more gammon. I will never go to a closing the gap morning tea or lunch. You won't see me there. And you won't see me going to a Sorry Day event either, because it continues to happen. So we have to decolonise our brains and go back to what the law of this land is, and that's what the priority is, because that's what's going to maintain our survival as Aboriginal people in this country. They've dwindled our numbers significantly since invasion. So I don't have all the answers to that, because all the answers are there. I'm not big shot politician that's going to tell you what I think is best for you. I need you to tell me what's best for you, and I act on that. And young people. We need more young people having their say, and people with disabilities. You know, it's so many of our mob are missing out on even getting a seat at the table.
Hello, I'm Grace from Townsville, Leanne's cousin sister, and know most of you here from a long time ago. I was very emotional with your speech, especially when we've been saying all this business for 60 years. And every one of my speeches I've given for the last 60 years, they all jump up at us and throw questions at us, mostly the white fellas, but what's the solution? You just had a death in Alice Springs, take all the black fellas' money away, and it's really sad. And I always put at the bottom of my speeches, take from the greedy and give to the needy, and those needy people will survive if they have culturally appropriate people. We're still teaching people that are in big positions, not our organisation, but their Aboriginality. And they don't understand the poverty and the stress of death and everything you just said, sister. And that's why I'm emotional. Yeah, but thank you very much. And thanks for the invite to this lovely conference. God bless.
Thank you, Auntie. And I remember Aunt, I don't know, it must have been 20 years ago, walking into some conference with this radical, like, Black Panther woman T-shirt, and I was like, wow, look at this woman. You excited me then, and you know, that's the guidance that I've had in my journey. I'm not always perfect. I don't always say the right thing, and some people love me and some people don't like me, and I don't care, because I'm not here to please people. I'm here to get justice for my people.
Just one question. How do we trust our mob that is in the political space, like our local members and the Indigenous, or the Minister for Indigenous Australians, when they can't even make a conference like this a priority?
I don't trust politicians. And honestly, working in that space, the deals are done not in the chamber, the deals are done behind closed doors. And I beg the ministers, you know, I begged them about the stolen gen payments that were being, they weren't excluded from aged care payments. So I put an amendment into the chamber and I said, can you just exclude the stolen gen payments so our elders can have a full aged care payment and have their stolen gen payment? And they said, no, not happening. And fought them, and then in the budget, they did it. And then, you know, speaking to the Minister for Health and saying, can we please I gave him a list of medications that need to be in the prisons to keep our people alive. Diabetic medication, like the basics to keep our people alive in prisons. He won't do that. I'm talking about the anti-racism framework with another minister, and she says, oh, it's not actionable. There's no goodwill from Labor or like whatever the government is. They're all the same. They're all maintaining the status quo of controlling our lives. We need to take that back, and we need to demand that housing is addressed here. Demand that they do something about this racist government that is hurting our people every day here. They have the power to do it. We just need to We need to come together, and we know how government fund this mob and not that mob and not that mob, and then we all row one another because that one's getting funding and that one's not. Well, back in the old days of community control, it was never like that. We all shared, and we all cared for the same people. We had the same purpose. We've lost that a bit. We've been corporatised. Our organisations have been corporatised. I question community control even in community control. We have to look at what community control actually means. And once we do that, when we're united, we are powerful. They can't pick us off then. They can't say, no, you come over here, we'll fund you. Don't worry about them ones. And we don't go. We go, no, we're standing together now, and we are demanding as a whole lot of us, a whole united front, that you give us these things, demands. These are our demands. That's closing the gap. Write the demands from this conference. We demand this and we demand that because you have the answer. You're the solution. So we can't rely on politicians. We've got to rely on us coming together. And that's something that they've tried to tear us apart since they arrived.